Good evening, and you're very welcome to episode number 3 of Bingewatch Academy Superhero Science. So just for those who are new to Bingewatch Academy Superhero Science, this is what it's all about. There have been, or will be, 4 episodes as part of Bingewatch Academy Superhero Science. We've already had 2 of those episodes. The first one that looked at Superman and Luke Cage and impenetrable materials, and the second one will focus on genetic engineering with Jessica Jones. Tonight, the focus is going to be on speed, not the drug, but the idea of going very, very quickly and very, very fast to your intended location or destination. And we're going to look at Supergirl and The Flash, 2 characters who use super speed to achieve some amazing feats. And as you see on stage, we have some speakers who are going to tell us different aspects about speed and what it could mean to have it and what kind of things you would need to think about if you were to have it. Now, also, besides this talk series, we also have a podcast series. And there would have been a pre-podcast episode put out about this in the last few days. And after this particular episode, there will be a post-podcast episode, in fact, a series of them, where I'm going to sit down with all the speakers, and we're going to reflect on what we spoke about today, and then put down some more thoughts on things that came up, and we thought, well, you know, that was something cool we didn't get to talk about. Let's talk about it here in the podcast. Podcast is on iTunes. It's on Spotify, and it would be great if you can listen in afterwards just to hear a little bit more from the speakers. And in addition, we want to spread the word. So if you're here today and you got your camera, I highly encourage you to take photos, put them on Twitter, put them on Facebook, spread the word about what we're doing here tonight. Try and use some of those hashtags there, and you can follow myself on Twitter at BW Science Now, and Studium Generale, which of course is involved in the organization of this, is at SGTU Delft. And just a little brief introduction about myself, for those who don't know who I am. My name is Barry Fitzgerald. I'm a superhero scientist and researcher based here at TU Delft. And in addition to doing computational physics, I'm also very much interested in superheroes, and it's actually turned into fundamental research for myself. So I write scientific papers on superheroes, I do studies about superheroes, and I'm doing this event tonight with a team of superhero speakers who are going to be speaking over the next few minutes. Now, I want to start out with some superhero news. It's something nice just to kick things off, right? So I think the big one that everyone is probably talking about is this, is Avengers Endgame. Now, just one hands up if you've seen Avengers Endgame. Hands up if you've seen it more than once. Hands up if you're going to see it tomorrow again. So yeah, so some people have seen it, some people have not. All I'm going to say is that it's fun, it's entertaining, it's emotional, and there's a lot of like, wow, did not think that was going to happen. But I had, let's say, an altercation on social media this morning with somebody who I don't really know, but I know through somebody else, who spoiled part of it. And I asked them to take down the spoiler, and they wouldn't. So please don't spoil the Endgame. Just don't. And this is on behalf of not me, but also for those who would not like it spoiled. And also this message came from the Russo brothers. So I encourage you not to spoil what happens. And I'm looking forward to seeing it for the 3rd time, and I'll probably see it 10 times while it's in cinema. But I should point out that there are other superhero films around. You may have seen this trailer over the last few days. This is X-Men Dark Phoenix. There was a new trailer released recently as well. And this, I think, will be the last X-Men film with these particular set of actors as they were at Fox, because Fox, which was X-Men and Fantastic Four and Deadpool, has all been absorbed by Disney. So at some point in the future, you might see Deadpool chilling out with the rest of the characters that are appearing in Avengers Endgame. And there is another superhero film coming out this summer. I think I'd like to point it out. I'll say a little bit more about it in the next episode of Bingewatch Academy. It's called Spider-Man Far From Home, and it sees Spider-Man undertake some adventures in Europe, predominantly. So basically the film is going to be set in Europe, and he goes to a number of cities, one of which happens to be Venice. There's a trailer out there as well, and I might show some of that in the next episode. So before I start, having talked a little bit more about those films, I want to do some questions. So a question. And what I do in all of these events is I will ask everyone a question, and you answer this on your phone. So that's the question. And you use menti.com. You go to menti.com, and you fill in the code 70281, and you can answer this question. Which superhero film are you most looking forward to seeing over the summer? Now, I've left out probably other films, but I've also included another one just to give everyone a different option, if none of those 3 films are your thing. And let's just see what we have here. So we have 6 answers, and the answers are coming through quickly. And the speakers can also vote if you have your phones, but none of you have your phones with you, right? You do? You can if you vote. You can if you want. You can vote. It's no problem. We have the time. Okay, so there's a very interesting result here. I think that most people have voted. While it's quite clear that most people in the room, half the room, in fact, more than half, want to see Avengers Endgame. And then there's some people here who are here for superheroes, but yet have voted for Toy Story 4. But I actually want to see Toy Story 4 too, if I'm honest about it, okay? So I think, yeah, I mean, you could even see them as kind of small, toy-like superheroes, if I was being really reaching for it. But yeah, I think it's fairly conclusive there. So just keep in mind that link. Don't close it off or lose it. We'll be using that link again later on over the course of the evening. And this should come back on for me. There we go. And I have to click there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 2 characters here this evening. And we're going to talk about their powers. We're going to talk about how we could actually properly attain it and what kind of problems we'd have to deal with if we were to be like these 2 characters. So the first one I want to talk about is, well, Barry Allen. So this is The Flash. This is Barry Allen. Now, as I'll tell you in a few moments, there is actually more than one Flash, and with many different names. But this particular Barry Allen is the one that appears in the CW's Arrowverse. This is a series that you can binge watch if you want to on Netflix. In fact, one of the speakers here on stage has watched. Venda, how much have you watched of The Flash?
5 seasons.
Okay, so if you didn't hear that because her mic is off, she said she's watched all 5 seasons in the build-up to this event. And just to check, how many episodes had you seen before this event?
0.
0. And that's roughly around 100 and...
No, that was a lot.
110 episodes, plus the crossover episodes, which we'll talk about later on as well. And his powers, well, is super speed. He's got accelerated healing, and he can also time travel. We might talk about that later on as well. The second character that we're going to focus on is Supergirl, whose real name is Kara Zor-El. No surprise that she comes from Kryton. We're at the same origin or same planet as Superman. And in the comic book, she's actually had 2 or 3 different names. Can't actually remember her real name in the first one in the 50s, but the current character, her real name is actually Kara Danvers. And if anyone is into Marvel, will know that Captain Marvel's real name is Carol Danvers. It's very, very close, right? But it actually goes even deeper than that, because in DC Comics you have Deathstroke, who is Slade Wilson. And then when Rob Liefeld was writing the character, he wanted to do an ode, Deadpool, he wanted to do an ode to Deathstroke, so he named his character Wade Wilson. So a lot of people think that Deadpool copies Deathstroke. No, it's the other way around. That Deathstroke copies Deadpool. It's actually Deadpool copying Deathstroke. Now, these characters are, yeah, pretty old. They've been around a long time. That is The Flash #1 from 1940. And The Flash in that, his real name was Jay Garrick, not Barry Allen. Barry Allen first appeared in 1956. But if you've watched all of the Flash series, like somebody on stage has, you may be aware that Jay Garrick actually may or may not appear in those series. And the cover on the right is Action Comics #252 from 1959, and that is the Supergirl from Krypton, and this is the introduction of Supergirl in the same comic book series that saw the introduction of Superman in Action Comics #1. So to introduce us, first of all, though, to, well, you know, when you run, you got to think about, it's going to be hard, and you got to run through something, and that's the air all around us. And as we run through that, well, it's going to try and slow you down. And it can be a little bit of a drag. Just a little bit. And our first speaker is going to talk about, well, just how much of a drag it could be and how to overcome this drag. And he is a PhD student here at TU Delft. And I'd like to give a warm round of applause for Alexander Spoelstra. There you go.
Thank you. Thanks, Barry, for the introduction. So yeah, like Barry said, I'm a PhD student at the aerodynamics department here at TU Delft. And I mainly work in the field of sports aerodynamics, more specifically in cycling. And for that reason, I actually want to start with a superhero of mine. So not with the two superheroes that we will discuss today, but with a real-life superhero. And that's this guy. Probably some of you, or even most of you, might know him. This is Tom Dumoulin. It's a Dutch cyclist, winner of Giro d'Italia 2017, and one of the best time trial cyclists in the world at the moment. And me, and together with the team in our department, we try to make him and his team even faster, even better in these time trials. And we do that by optimizing their aerodynamics. Most of this is done in wind tunnels. And because we want to do a lot of research, a lot of tests, the cyclists don't have that much time. So what we did is we 3D scanned Tom Dumoulin, we made a full-scale 3D print, and we put him in the wind tunnel like this, on a static model. And now we can actually, every day of whenever we want, we can change his helmet, see which suit is better, change his bike, the wheels, change his position slightly. So we can do whatever we want. And with our findings, we try to help the team. So mainly we focus on position of the cyclist and on the suit. And the technique we use most often in a wind tunnel is called particle image velocimetry, which is in short PIV. And with that we visualize actually the flow around and behind the athlete. And PIV works as follows. So we don't see the air around us. So we have to first introduce some small particles into the air, which we then illuminate by, let me see if this works. No, okay. Anyway, so we illuminate it with a laser light, and when the particles cross this laser sheet, they scatter a lot of light, and that light we capture with high-speed cameras. And in that way, we're taking enough recordings with small time intervals, we can actually track the particle in time. And then we get something like this. So this is how a raw PIV image looks. And then at a second time instance, it might look like this. And then if we go through it, you can clearly see actually the movement of the flow. And that is how we then can visualize the flow field in the wake of the cyclist. And we create, as particles, we create this eeny, tiny helium-filled soap bubbles. These helium-filled soap bubbles, they actually follow the flow very accurately. And on the top left, you can see very zoomed in and slow motion video of one single bubble generator. Below that, you can see in real time the amount of bubbles one nozzle creates. So it's about 20,000 bubbles per second. And then on the right, you can actually see how it looks when we use our full generator of 200 nozzles on the full-scale mannequin. And then we take this plane behind the cyclist, and we like I said, we visualize his flow field in his wake, and from that we can determine all sorts of things. Actually, everything we want. So we can visualize the flow field. So on the left you see the streamwise vorticity, which is in the direction of the cyclist. The streamwise velocity and the streamwise vorticity, which is the in-plane velocity. So circulation, basically. And from this we can see where the cyclist has to optimize his or her position. So for example, we can see if there is an elbow sticking out or a head sticking out, and we can directly pinpoint what is causing, or what is the main cause of the drag, and how to decrease this. But this is all in a wind tunnel, and like I said, only most of our research is in wind tunnel. We also go outside of a wind tunnel, and there we basically bring the PIV setup, so the particle image field symmetry, to the cyclist. We let the cyclist train in his own environment, for example on a cycling track, and we set up our PIV there, and that looks a bit like this. So we have our laser sheet again, the bubble generator, the cameras, and we have a cyclist actually passing through this bubble cloud, let's say. So in a wind tunnel, to repeat, in a wind tunnel, we have a static cyclist, where we blow the bubbles over the cyclist. In the ring of fire, as we call it, we have a cloud of bubbles, our PIV setup, and the cyclist can pass through as many times as possible. And I have a cool video from the last experiment. So here we are riding together with the cyclist through our ring of fire, and he is actually just riding loops, loop after loop, 40, 50, 100 loops. And at the time he's training, we can actually real time look at the flow field around him, behind him, and see what he's doing wrong or what he's doing good. And then when he wants a break, we can directly discuss with him what to change or discuss what to keep. And so we can compare different runs together. And then from this kind of experiment, we get these results. So what you see here is, for example, on the left is a plot of the resistance of the cyclist in two different positions. So the pink one and the green one. The pink one is clearly worse compared to the green one. And we can directly relate that to the flow field. So I will not go into detail here too much because of time, but we clearly saw that the pink position created a lot more drag, and we could relate that to the flow field that we see here. Another benefit that we have from the ring of fire, in the wind tunnel, you can only take one plane behind the cyclist at one position at a time. In the ring of fire, if he passes, we can take as many planes as we want, and we can actually study the full development of the wake of the cyclist. And that is the advantage, that we can actually see, if we are with 2 or 3 cyclists, where the second or third cyclist should be positioned to have the maximum benefit. So how can we apply what we know to the Flash and Supergirl? Like I said, we also develop suits for cyclists. And if I look at their suits, I think we can improve a bit there. Mainly Supergirl with the cape and then the hair. Flash is already on a good way. I mean, if he comes from what did you say, Barry? It was 1940, the first? Yeah, the helmet didn't really look...
the helmet, and he's got like 2 little wings on top. Yeah.
So this is already a lot better, but there's still some room for improvement, we think. But let's first go back to how we apply it to cyclists and what we do. There is a very famous phenomenon in aerodynamics, which is called the drag crisis. And that is actually, we see that with increasing Reynolds number, there is a sudden drop in drag. The Reynolds number is a dimensionless number which makes it able for us to compare similar shapes in different flows. So at different velocities, different viscosities, the similar shape at a different size. And what we actually see is 2 regions here in this graph. We see a subcritical, so before the drag crisis, and a critical regime, where we actually want to be in this critical regime. So let's do a quick calculation for a cyclist, for an upper arm, for example. Oh no, wait. I want to put a bit focus first on the subcritical and critical regime. So the reason that we have in a subcritical regime a higher drag is because the wake is a lot wider, and in the critical regime there is actually a more narrow wake because of generation of turbulence, which creates the lower drag. So if you do this calculation for the arm of a cyclist at 50 kilometers per hour, 10 centimeter arm in diameter, we see that we actually in the range of, I'm going to try again, but no. I see my arrow, but not. I see it on the screen. Bah. Anyway, so we are actually in the regime, in the subcritical regime with our cyclist. So he has a high drag. So how can we make sure that our cyclist feels less drag without changing his velocity or letting him cycle through water or whatever? Well, we apply some roughness on the skin of the cyclist, on his upper arm, and in practice that looks like this. So different teams use different garments depending on the manufacturer of the suit. This is how it currently looks. Maybe in the future we can go to more something like this, where we have an adaptable skin, which adapts to the cyclist velocity if you're going uphill, downhill, in a corner, whatsoever. So if we then look at the Reynolds number for the Flash and Supergirl, assuming that they go 3,000 meters per second, we see that our Reynolds number is actually about 2 orders of magnitude too big in order for them to gain some aerodynamics from this surface roughness that we use in cyclists and runners. So there are 2 options. We can ask them to run or fly through apple syrup or honey, which has a very high viscosity, or we can shrink down the Flash to about half the size of a €1 cent, and then we would be able to get the right size, the right Reynolds number, to be able to design a proper suit for them. And if we do that, we see actually that if we scale them to the right size, that the Flash is already on a good way, but that Supergirl still can use some roughnesses on the arms and should definitely drop the cape. So yeah, these are our partners in the research, and I would like to go to the questions, I guess. Question time.
Yep. Great. Okay. You want to use the catch box? So everyone can hear. There we go.
Hello. Yeah. Your research is upon a cyclist who has a vastly different position than those people running, I imagine, since they're straight up and stuff. Would they not also benefit from other parts being like ridges, or would that just decrease their efficiency?
No, so
you have this whole torso area.
You're completely correct. In terms of cycling, we mainly look at the upper body because that is standing still. In running, you can look indeed to the legs and to the arms, but then you would need to take into account the actual movement of the arm. And if you run at, let's say, 5 meters per second, and your arm is moving at 1 meter per second, the relative velocity of your arm is going from 3 meters per second to 6 meters per second, which you can take into account, but you get a different design approach. And then you can do the same for the legs, of course.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else got any questions? We got 2. If you could just throw it back a couple of rows, there we go, or hand it back. Very polite.
Yeah, thank you very much for a great talk. I wondered about this sudden decrease of the drag coefficient. Your drag force is going up with the square of the velocity, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So that's only for a while. That then I guess the drag force drops and then increases again? How does that?
Then it increases a bit again, but that's mainly because of more friction. So what we plotted there actually is not the drag force, but the drag coefficient.
Yeah.
So it's you have the drag formula, which is half rho v squared CD, the drag coefficient, and I plotted the drag coefficient. So if your velocity goes up, this coefficient
works against it just for that.
Exactly.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I have a doubt regarding the cape of Supergirl. So you said that if the turbulence increases, the drag reduces. I assume it's similar to the way you have dimples on a golf ball.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Can the cape increase turbulence and thereby reduce drag? Is it possible?
Not in this case, because the dimples on a golf ball or the roughness surface on the arm of a cyclist is there to keep the flow attached. Because of the extra turbulence, the flow gets more energy. The more energy it can use to stay attached to the body, and the cape is going all directions.
What if it's not like that described in the figures? But what if the cape just sticks to the body of Supergirl or Superman, so that the flow is more streamlined? Wouldn't it be possible in some cases if it's
unless you actually stick it to the body? I mean, then you got to wonder
but then
what's the point of having the cape?
Then?
Yeah, what's the point of having the cape? It's for the look.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We have time for one very quick question. Can you throw? Let's see what happens here. Oh, almost. Yeah. Okay.
I have a question for you. What made you decide to focus on the suit and the rider and not the bike itself?
Because the combination of bike and cyclist, when they go cycling through air, the total amount of the resistance they feel is 90%. So 10% is rolling and gears and everything. And of that 90%, 80% is coming from the cyclist, and only 20% is coming from the bike. So the drag, the most benefit can be gained by optimizing the cyclist.
Thank you for your answer.
Okay.
Should I throw it back to you now?
No, you can hold on to it. You keep it there. You just look after it for the next talk, okay? Alexander, thanks very much for your talk. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to do one of these questions again based on what Alexander told us all about. So I went the wrong way. And this is the question. Which experiment would you sign up for? Would you go through the wind tunnel, the ring of fire, or run through honey? I know which one I would do. What do you think? Can we get a grant for this?
I can present it to my professor.
Yeah? What do you think the reception will be? I think it'll be okay, right?
Yeah.
But I think you're kind of happy. I think Alexander's probably going to be happy about this because the Ring of Fire is actually what your expertise is on, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Wouter is working. Actually, my colleague, which could not join, is working in the wind tunnel.
And then we got 25 people who I want to describe as unorthodox who would like to run through honey. Yeah. Okay. Let's get on to the next part of the presentation. Okay, so this is a superhero film that maybe some people have seen. Has anyone seen Shazam? Hands up. Okay. Shazam, some people have seen it. Now, there's a trailer, but I don't think it's going to work. So those who don't know, Shazam is actually another DC comic book character, who I spoke about actually a few times in the last couple of episodes. In actual fact, Shazam's original name was Captain Marvel. And they changed it in the 60s or 70s after, of course, as you can imagine, little bit of discussions with Marvel. I actually think the name is better. I think Shazam is a really cool name. If you haven't seen the film, I think you should go see it. It's actually great fun. It's a really good, fun film, fun superhero film. That's the whole emphasis on it. For those who don't, I don't want to give away anything because we want to stay spoiler-free in this, but it's a really good film. So if you haven't seen it, please watch it. I don't think the trailer's going to play, so I'm just going to zoom through it. And it doesn't, that's fine. Okay, so we're talking about Supergirl, we're talking about The Flash. And as we found out, running or cycling can be a bit of a drag and can be quite annoying. Obviously, if there was no drag, you'd go a bit faster. But some runners, well, they just happen to be naturally better than others. And there you have three quite famous sprinters or runners from the world of athletics. However, there is a problem with some of the modern-day runners, let's say in the last 30 to 40 years, and how they achieve what they achieve. And that could be said for many athletes. They tend to do this a little bit assisted or a little illegally. And that obviously raises some questions, ethical questions about what they actually do and why they're doing it. So to explain to us tonight about how this issue of doping in sports could be dealt with and what it actually could mean for someone like The Flash, yes, there is a connection. I'm going to introduce two speakers from the iGEM team from 2018. I'm not going to tell you what iGEM is because they're going to explain it to you. I'd like everyone to give a warm round of applause to the two speakers who are Monique and Venda. See you first.
Okay. Hi everyone, as Barry mentioned, that's Monique and I'm Venda, and we are standing here on behalf of the 2018 iGEM team, which are actually sitting on the front row here. And we will be talking about superheroes in real life and how our project are actually related to it. So first of all, I would like to tell you a bit about iGEM itself. So iGEM is a synthetic biology competition in which every year more than 300 teams come to Boston to present their project. So the goal of iGEM is so that each and every team can try to solve a world problem of their choice by using synthetic biology. We're going to talk about The Flash. So as Barry mentioned, Barry Allen, or The Flash, is the fastest man alive in his world. And if we look at our own world and think about who is actually the fastest man alive in our world, maybe we can think of Justin Gatlin, who actually beat Usain Bolt in the 2017 championship. Or if we look at other sport, maybe we think about Lance Armstrong, or maybe Alex Rodriguez, one of the best in baseball, or Maria Sharapova, one of the best in tennis. So all of these, in order to be the best, I bet they train really hard. But unfortunately, sometimes they use a little bit of an illegal approach, which actually all of them has in common is that they have been somehow related or been accused of using doping. But even though they've used doping or like chemical doping, they're still not quite the same as The Flash. Because the thing is, as you saw in the movie, so Barry Allen used to be just a normal guy with the normal DNA, the same as us. But then he was struck by lightning and got exposed to the dark matter, which turned him into The Flash, that changed him on a genetic level into The Flash. So if all of these athletes I mentioned before, when they use chemical doping, the changes are kind of temporary, let's say, but they're not really changed on a genetic level. But now there's another type of doping that allows them to get the change more on a genetic level, and that is called the gene doping. So gene doping is when someone uses artificial DNA, when they use synthetic DNA, and inject it to themselves to make them perform better. So how would anyone use gene doping in order to become more like The Flash? And Dr. Kryton Store from The Flash actually gave us the answer on Season 2, Episode 8, if I'm not mistaken. No, Season 2, Episode 8. So she said that when a speedster runs, they consume an extraordinary amount of oxygen. So in order to become more of a Flash, we need something to be able to increase the amount of oxygen. And that secret lies in a protein called EPO. So EPO is a protein that is produced naturally by our body. So this EPO protein kind of helps the production of red blood cells. So how would someone use gene doping to increase the amount of EPO in their body? So they would take an artificial DNA, a synthetic DNA, and inject it to their body. And our body will think that it's a natural DNA coming naturally from our body, and the body will then produce more EPO. And if you have more EPO, you will be able to produce more red blood cell, and with more red blood cell, you will be able to take in more oxygen so that you will be able to perform better, to run faster, just like the Flash. So if this would be the level of EPO on an average athlete, maybe when you use gene doping, maybe it will triplicate. But I have to admit, it's still going to be, you need to have a lot of those in order to be the Flash. And probably before you even reach this level, you will probably get a stroke first. So as you can imagine, that's the first disadvantage or risk of using gene doping, which is it can give you a lot of risk of your health. And that's not exactly the only risk of using gene doping. Now I want you all to really think about what would happen if someone used gene doping in sport. What would happen if we have superhumans in the middle of regular athletes? Will it kind of be more of a battle of science than a battle of sport itself? Or will it like decrease the equality in sports? Or will it take off all the beauty in sport? Or will it make it even more exciting? But no matter what we think about it, the World Anti-Doping Agency has put gene doping on their prohibited list. So these substances are not allowed. So this is where our team, the 2018 IGEM teams comes in, where we make a process in order to detect gene doping. And Monique now will tell you how.
Thanks, Venda. So yeah, I'm going to tell you how did our team actually develop a method to detect gene doping. And this is where I'd like to introduce ADOPE, the Advanced Detection of Performance Enhancement. But before I go into the detail of actually how did we detect it, I thought it might be nice to give you some background information. So what I did is I compared a computer to a living organism, kind of same as the previous speakers. So a computer has binary code, ones and zeros, whereas the human body, or like a living organism, they have DNA code, which is A, T, G, and C. And binary code, it codes for letters, numbers, and symbols, whereas in your body, DNA codes for proteins. And both these letters and numbers gives instructions for a computer so it can operate. So does proteins in our body. It gives instructions of how to operate. So now, like Venda has already told you, she kind of showed that diagram of the man running, and he has synthetic DNA that produces more EPO, which is that red blood cell. So now, how do we actually detect it? And this is where our method comes in. It's quite a simple method. It consists of 3 steps. The first step is sample preparation. And basically, this is just we obtain a blood sample from an athlete, and we extract the DNA. And that DNA can be both the synthetic, like doping DNA that's injected, as well as all the DNA in your body. Next is the actual detection method. And at this point, we want to fish out just the doping DNA, not the rest of the DNA in your body. Next, we want to sequence this DNA. And the reason for sequencing is we want to verify that it is indeed gene dope, or like a doping DNA. And now I'm going to focus on these last 2 steps, because that's where most of the development of our project went in. Required components for our detection method. So first, we have a fusion protein. And the role of this protein is to detect the doping DNA. And here, so let's compare this fusion protein to a detective, just to kind of make sure everybody is following along. Next, we have adapters. And these adapters, it gets loaded into our fusion protein, and this is a very important part for sequencing of the DNA. And think of this as kind of the handcuffs of the detective. Next, we have something called guide RNA. And guide RNA is the component that tells this fusion protein where to go. It leads it to the target site. And kind of think of this as maybe like some sort of evidence that the detective has, so maybe like a fingerprint or something. And then lastly, the doping DNA, which is the synthetic DNA that Venda was talking about. This looks different than your native DNA, and this is how we're able to detect it. And this fusion protein can bind to a target site on that DNA. And think of the doping DNA as some sort of criminal that the detective is looking for. So now, how does the fusion protein actually find this DNA? Like, how is the detective going to find the criminal? So basically, the fusion protein, it scans through all the DNA, and it looks for a very particular site. And you see there, let me see if I can get this to work. No, it doesn't work. But you can see where that fusion protein, it docks on the DNA, and that's complementary matching of the fusion protein to that target site. And now, when it docks, it can actually introduce those adapters. And that's basically, think of the detective somehow handcuffing the suspect. And then finally, we need to know if the suspect is actually guilty. So think of it like the detective takes the criminal into the police office and they run their fingerprints. So that's exactly what we do. We take the athlete, like we run the DNA, and then bam, we find the sequence. And then we can actually confirm that that is synthetic DNA, that it is indeed the doping DNA. And now I'd like to conclude by comparing our team to Star Labs. So just like Cisco, The Flash, and Dr. Caitlin try to find the bad metahumans and kind of remove them from society, so does our team. We developed a method to detect gene doping. We want to detect athletes that are not using, or that are using gene doping unethically. And yeah. So finally, I want to thank all our sponsors. A project like this is not possible without sponsors, as well as I want to thank the supervisors, as well as all the instructors that helped us along the way. The whole team, we are sitting in the front there. And then I also want to introduce you to the 2019 team. And they're sitting up front here as well. And so if you're interested in what the next team is doing, they're doing a completely new project. You can find them on Facebook by just Googling TU Delft iGEM, or you can actually go to the Dream Team page, and you can also find them there. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much. Venda, I'll get you to come over here as well. Get you to go over here to this side of me, to my left. Right, has anyone got any questions about this work? Anyone? Yes, you can do a throw there. Oh, well done. Nice, good catch. Oh yeah, round of applause for the catch.
Yeah, very nice talk as well, thanks. I was wondering, is this now just a hypothetical possibility, or are there already indications that actually supports people already doing this?
So yeah, nobody has actually been caught of gene doping, and the reason why is there is no method right now to detect gene doping. However, there has been some rumors. I know in the 2008 Beijing Olympics, there was a reporter or a doctor approached a reporter, undercover reporter, and asked if he wanted gene doping, and there was some amount, I think it was like $20,000 or something like that. There's another thing called like biohackers. The previous talk, they kind of briefly talked on this as well. And I forget which speaker said it, but they showed a video of a guy actually injecting DNA into their body. You get gene therapy, which is exactly this. So I personally think there's quite some evidence that this is a possibility, and then I think we all know that some athletes will go to extreme lengths to be the best. And I think those two facts together should answer your question.
Okay, thanks.
Has anybody else got another question? Oh, that's going to be easy. What an easy pass on the box there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my question is, like, in your method, you assume that, like, the DNA sequence you are looking for is known. Is it that right? Because, like you said, okay, you scroll all the DNA and then you say, okay, this is what we are looking for. How can you know that precise sequence is so wrong to be the wrong one, like the one you're looking?
Yeah. So the doping DNA is a synthetic piece of DNA, and they have several differences from the DNA occurs normally in our body. So, for instance, a bit into detail, the DNA in our body consists of 2 different parts. One is called intron, and another one is called exon. And the intron is a part of the DNA that's actually not going to be translated into proteins. But for a synthetic DNA, a doping DNA, usually those kind of introns will be removed because then it will make all the genes shorter so that it will be easier to be processed by our body so that our body can process them easier into proteins, and then like the EPO, and we will to produce more EPO and to take the effects of the doping itself. So we're looking on that kind of difference between the gene doping and the natural DNA in our body.
Thank you.
And if I can add a little bit to that as well, this is again something we didn't present, but one of our team members sitting in the audience as well made a code, so again, if you're into biology, you might know that proteins, which is like the most important part, it is like to go to DNA, there is some flexibility there. And one team member actually wrote a whole algorithm to give us all the possibilities. So like you had mentioned, like what if it's wrong? We have a list of, it could be A, B, C, or D. And then, you know, like the fingerprints that I showed, which was the guide RNA, you can design like however many of those that you want. And it's something called multiplexing. So we just mix in all of those guide RNAs. So even if a doper decides to slightly change the sequence, which biology allows for that, then we're still going to catch them because we designed, like we have an algorithm for that. So, yeah.
There's no getting away then with it, is there?
No.
You're right.
But if you're going to do something, do it right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So you're going to be, so iGEM, with your amazing technique, are going to be the superheroes of gene doping detection.
We hope so.
You hope so, yeah. I'm going to ask a very quick question.
Yeah.
Will a technique like yours be used by those who are chasing the dopers in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
So one of our team members actually went to Canada, presented this like together with other, like a panel group for doping in general in sports, presented this technique. They really liked it, so maybe 10 years.
10 years.
Answer. I think within 10 years, hopefully you see our technique there.
That'll be great, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
Fantastic. Super interesting. Another round of applause for Monika Venda. Thanks very much. Okay, so we got a question about that presentation, of course. So this is the question. So iGEM's gene doping detection approach is highly innovative. Do you think this approach will help stop cheaters in sports? You have 3 options. You can also vote as well, but I think I know where you're going to vote. Oh. Maybe you should vote. It's a straight shootout. Has everyone voted? I think so. Yeah. Oh, wait. There we go. Anybody else? That's it. So, okay, very close. You've effectively split the room. I'm probably going to go out on a hunch and say that of the 19 people here who said yes, absolutely, that's probably made up of all iGEM people, right? So this might be a little bit biased. Just a little bit. And the 20 said no, they'll find another way around it or a way around it. Historically, that's always been the way, right? But maybe you will be the ones who say, you know, enough's enough. Really interesting results, and we 4 who are unsure. Okay, so the next part of the talk, and what I like to do is to just present a little bit on some science news. And This is Professor Xavier. Now, Professor Charles Xavier, who is the head of the X-Men, is going to appear in X-Men Dark Phoenix. This is James McAvoy in the role of Professor Xavier. Now, he has many quite amazing and astounding powers. He's able to stop time and freeze people in whatever position they are in, but he also seemingly can actually read people's minds. Now, mind reading, you might think, well, that's never going to happen, and it's a long way off, and a long way off into the future. And there are actually people who are actually trying to read people's minds, really are looking at it. But there was a paper that actually came out, well, today. It's in Nature. It's been publicized, I think, in the news in the last couple of days. And this is the paper. And what they have given it the title of Speech Synthesis from Neural Decoding of Spoken Sentences. And effectively what they did is they introduced a brain-computer interface into some part of the brain. They were able to measure and detect particular neural activity within the brain and correlate that neural activity with the creation of speech. So effectively what they did was they took brain thought, the thoughts of speaking, and converted that using an algorithm, using a computer, into an artificial voice spoken on a computer. And I've listened to some of it, and it's actually quite clear. So they did tests with some of the footage, some of the pieces, the voice pieces, and about 70% of the time people could identify the sentences that were being spoken. That's quite extraordinary. So perhaps we're only a matter of years away from mind reading, which, to be honest, sounds highly unethical. But also, the superhero part of me kind of thinks it's really cool. But I also have to say it's unethical. Right, finally, what we're going to do in the last talk here is talk about, well, what ifs. Okay, so what you've heard about is absolutely, if I'm running really quickly or cycling really fast, I'm going to have to deal with drag. The second thing is that, well, if I'm running really quickly and I'm winning lots of gold medals at the Olympics, then people are going to be wondering how are they actually doing it, whether it's legal or not. And the third thing is then, what would the impact of being able to actually run really fast be on society? So it's a bunch of what if questions. So to introduce us to, well, these what-if questions and some what-if answers, I'd like a warm round of applause for our final speaker tonight. That is Maya Rigoth.
Thank you, Barry. Is this on? Yes. Okay. What I'm going to be presenting today is going to be mostly hypothetical. So any physicists in the crowd, please feel free to come beat me up if I say anything wrong after my talk, right? I'm going to be making a bunch of assumptions, and one of them being that Supergirl and The Flash can go just as fast. There's a lot of speeds and a lot of sources that say that he can go as fast as lightning and he can go certain speeds. I'm going to assume he's going to be going as fast as this fighter jet I found online. The Mikoyan MiG-31 Foxbat is random one. It has a top speed of 2.8 Mach. Now, what is a Mach? Barry told me one thing. He doesn't want to see any equations today, so let's get through it. We go to Wikipedia, we ignore everything, we just look at this part. By definition, at 1 Mach, the local flow velocity, u, is equal to the speed of sound. So, if you're going at Mach 0.65, you're going 65% the speed of sound, and if you're going at Mach 1.35, you're going 35% faster than the speed of sound. Meaning that the Flash and Supergirl going at 2.8 Mach are going 180% faster than the speed of sound. Now, who knows what that is? That right there is called a vapor cone, and it happens when an object transcends the sound barrier. Once that happens, people will experience something called a shock wave. And what is a shock wave? Shock wave happens from a sonic boom. Not only does it look cool and has nothing to do with Sonic the Flash, a shock wave happens when an object approaches the sound barrier, it produces pressure waves. And as it approaches the sound barrier itself, all these pressure waves converge into one apparent shock wave, but it's actually just a very intense concentration of a lot of shock waves. And we, as humans, would perceive that as a shock, as you can see here. Now, a shock here from the GIF you can see here would be from an object going at 1 Mach. 1 Mach being 1,235 kilometers per hour, which is fast, because a shock wave will come at you, even though it's only you'll only experience it for like a fraction of a second. It's pretty fast. In comparison, the Category 5 hurricane that hit the Caribbean and parts of the US in 2017, Maria, did a lot of damage. It's unfair to compare it, actually, because these wind speeds, which were 275 kilometers per hour, were present for several hours, and so did a lot of destruction. But the following is going to be a video of a low-flying jet that's going at 1.1 Mach. Yeah. Looks pretty cool. But maybe what you didn't see is that all of the windows in that building are gone. And about a fraction of everyone who was standing there, their what's it called? Oortrommels? Their eardrums, sorry. Their eardrums are gone as well, you know. It's very loud. So if you would experience, if you would experience the Flash or Supergirl passing by you at 2.8 Mach, which would be 12.5 times stronger than Hurricane Maria, and 3,500 kilometers per hour, it would be probably a lot less like a Flash running through the streets, and probably a whole lot more like this, which is unfortunate, as any pedestrian would experience, right? Now, let's look at time travel. I think most physicists here can, I don't think anyone can say for certain that we know that it's possible to travel back in time. But according to this guy, we can't. That's not happening. But he does say that it's possible to travel forwards in time. Sort of. Has anyone here ever seen Interstellar? Raise your hand. Oh, awesome. Oh, amazing. Okay. If you haven't, it's also fine. In Interstellar, there's a scene where 3 crew members leave their spaceship and go to a nearby planet while one of them stays on the ship. Maybe you guys remember this, Romilly. Romilly decides to stay on the ship. The 3 crew members, or the ones that are left, go back to find that even though they were gone for 3 hours, the poor Romilly had been waiting for them for 23 years. This phenomenon is called time dilation. And time dilation, vaguely said, is the change of the passage of time. So this guy, this guy has 2 ways of explaining this, using general relativity, the one I don't understand, and special relativity, the one I kind of understand. I see the physicists laughing way too hard. Yeah, general relativity is what happens in Interstellar. When an object or a clock that is close to a strong gravitational field, the clock will run slower compared to one at a weaker gravitational field. As it happens in Interstellar because the planet is so close to a giant black hole. Another kind of way that time dilation happens is with, I'm going to try to explain with the classic textbook example, the space twins paradox. Right, what happens is you have 2 space exploring twins. We'll call them Malik and Jamal. Jamal is excited, he gets on his spaceship while Malik stays home. We're assuming that this is an extremely advanced civilization, so Jamal's spaceship can go 99% the speed of light, which is very fast. Let's just say that Jamal visits the Kuiper Belt. Jamal puts a timer. He's gone for 10 years to Unboke. He goes there, he gets some data, collects everything he needs, and he comes back. He comes back, and for him, his idea, he left Earth 10 years ago. He comes back and finds his brother Malik had been waiting on him for 71 years. That's the phenomenon of time dilation. And another way to explain this is, again, looking at a very advanced civilization. Imagine you have a train, a very fast bullet train. And this bullet train can go up to 95% speed of light, or 0.95 c, c being the constant we use to describe the speed of light. And on that train, you have some kind of hybrid between the Flash and Usain Bolt. We'll call him Usain Flash. And he is also very fast. He can go 70% the speed of light. He can run that fast. You are outside looking at him running inside this train, right? And they're both going in the same direction. So how fast would you see Usain Flash go? Wouldn't their speeds just add up? Wouldn't it add up to being faster than the speed of light? Is that possible? It's not. It isn't. What you, as an outside perceiver, a stationary perceiver, would see is actually Usain Bolt trying to reach the speed of light, but this guy states that no matter what frame of reference you are in, the speed of light is always going to stay the same. It's always going to be c. So as Usain Flash tries to reach the speed, you would actually see him slow down. His clocks would slow down to make sure that he would never reach c. So he would essentially be going in slow motion. Now, what if Barry wants to travel in time? Say Barry is bored and he's going to run around the circumference of the Earth around the equator. Sure, why not? But here I'll assume that Barry can go 99% speed of light, right? We have no idea what he's going to do, so we just wait. We're waiting, he starts going, he goes round and round the Earth, and we're just waiting. 5 years pass. 5 years later, and he suddenly stops. Us, the normies, he's only been running for 5 years, and we ask him, Barry, how long have you been gone? It's been 5 years. Barry stops and looks at his clock, and he's like, I've only been running for 8.5 months. I don't understand. That's a phenomenon of time dilation. It's not very effective for time travel, but that's how it could work. Another example is, say Barry says, no, I have a limited food supply, I'm tired, I don't want to do too much, so Barry's only going to run for 6 months. But he's going to go a little bit faster. He's going to go at 99.99875% the speed of light. Might as well be the speed of light, but you know you can't reach that. Now, for 6 months he does this. How long do you think that we will be waiting for him? 3 years, maybe 10 years. Barry running for 6 months, we will have to wait 100 years for him to stop. So the closer he is to the speed of light, the more effectively he can run, basically, through time. And in fact, if he were to run for that much time over the circumference of the Earth, he would have cycled the Earth 118 million times. Now, looking back at the destruction that, that he would have caused, I'm not sure if we had an Earth left if we tried to do that. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Maya, for a very interesting what-if presentation. Does anyone have any questions for Maya on what she's spoken about? Anybody anybody here want to time travel? Okay. Yeah, some people do, some people don't. So, Maya, do you want to time travel in this way after you told us all about this?
I don't think it's very effective, you know.
What's the most ineffective element of this to you?
Well, assuming that we can achieve as humans within the next 100 years that we can even run a fraction of the speed of light, then even then we wouldn't travel much, because say if Barry were to run at the velocity that I assumed that he could run, 2.8 Mach, and he were to do that for 6 months, I suppose technically he would travel in time, but the amount that he would travel in time was so small, my calculator won't even display it. Like, my calculator can't even say what it is.
So in the TV series, Barry Allen time travels. We see him time traveling, and he's definitely not reaching the speeds you talk about, 99% speed of light. So is there something else missing? This is a what if, so is there something else we're missing out here?
You know, as physicists, we assume a lot. We don't know a lot either. There's a lot out there that is hypothetical, that could exist, could also not exist. So maybe DC's explanation for why he can go into the past and interact with himself, the Speed Force, maybe that exists. Maybe that's another element in physics that we just haven't discovered, and maybe it exists out there anyway. And if it does, then we can travel back in time.
Or maybe it's just two words put together to explain away a whole bunch of problems.
I didn't write the story.
Yeah, exactly, because that's what comic book people tend to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Does anyone have any questions at all for Maya on what you heard there? Does anyone, after asked the question again, you're all very keen to time travel, yes or no? No? Yes? What you might have seen as well in the video that Maya showed is that when the plane flew over, first of all, because I did see it the first time Maya showed me the video, I was like, okay, that's just a plane flying over. But the windows actually all shatter
immediately
on the building. Did everyone see that? No. So what we'll do is we'll go back and show you that. So what you want to do is you want to ignore the plane. I know it's hard. I know it's really hard to me to tell you that. But don't look at the plane, okay? Just look at the white building.
You can see the dust and the rest of everything that this try to survive. No.
Did everyone see it that time? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what it would be like if Supergirl or The Flash
would run through your neighborhood.
I know we got a question, yeah?
Yeah, is it on? Yeah. This question is due to my ignorance, so yeah, I'm just asking, of course. This effect happens if you go at Mach 1, right? If you double it, so Mach 2, does it happen again? Or
the shockwave that's produced by the object that's going at Mach 1 is at the same speed that the object is going. Yeah. So if you're going 2.5 times faster than the speed than Mach 1, then the shockwave will be 2.5 times stronger. So the faster you're going, the worse the effect.
I have a question about the survival of the guy himself, right? I mean, if you're killing everything around you, how would a simple human being like us just going super fast survive it himself?
So if it was Supergirl, it doesn't matter because she's an alien. So we don't really know what's happening over there. But Barry, the comics books say he's protected by, again, the Speed Force, two random words put together. But they say that his suit is also very effective. But if it was just a normal human in some kind of biker suit, I don't think he would last very long going at that velocity.
I think the skin would like just
I'd probably just rip off,
your,
and it'd just be a mess, really.
Yeah.
They also kind of explain it away by saying he's got accelerated healing. So it's as if, as his body's been torn apart, he's also healing himself as fast.
But it means that he's just leaving fragments of himself scattered to the wind.
Basically, he's just leaving like dead skin everywhere.
Like a free spaghetti sauce.
Yeah. Thanks very much for the questions. A round of applause for Maya. Okay, so similarly, we have a very nice question on this talk. I really like this question. So, which of these is the biggest issue that Supergirl has to deal with when flying through cities? Getting hit by broken glass, insurance claims, breaking no-fly zones at night, residential complaints. Okay. Somebody thought, yeah, it's kind of bad that getting hit by broken glass was getting just 0, so they gave it a 1. So we have kind of a split here. So basically, while it's good to complain, when you do a claim, there's more likely to be some sort of financial gain. Nice bit of rhyme in there, right? So for those who went with the 25 and on insurance claims, I think I'd be in there too, for sure. Okay, so that was the last question for this evening. And now what we're going to do is, just for a few minutes, what I am going to do is I'm going to sit down with speakers and just have a little chat with them about what they all spoke about in a little bit more detail. So Alexander told us all about drag, and You see, the thing is, it actually has a personal implication for you, right? Because you are a triathlete.
Triathlete, yeah.
As in, you'll try any sport, right? No, joking. But you are a triathlete. So, has your work actually influenced your sporting career?
Okay, first of all, I'm a triathlete at a very, very low level.
I am not a triathlete at all, so you're ahead of me.
Yeah, in that sense that in the weekend, in some spare time, I put myself on my bike in the wind tunnel. I use the equipment from the team that they gave to us for research. Maybe I should not tell that now.
This has been filmed and may or may not be appearing online.
Yeah, and I tried this very famous zigzag strips as well. So I tried out a few things, and I think I really had some advantages there, yeah.
So basically, you used equipment from professional sport athletes and have incorporated it into your own events. Do you actually bring some of this equipment with you to a triathlon? You should choose your answer carefully.
The helmet, yeah.
Okay. And does the helmet actually have an effect over a helmet that I could afford to buy?
Yeah, it has about... So a normal road helmet compared to a time trial helmet has an effect of about 3-4% in less drag. Yeah.
Okay. So for you, it makes you like a couple of percentages faster, effectively.
Or less tired.
Or less tired. Yes, yeah, you get to the end faster and quicker and with more energy. So have you ever been inspired by doing a triathlon and said, yeah, I'm going to do an experiment now in the laboratory inspired by what I've actually done right or wrong here today during an event?
Yeah, in a sense that during an event in triathlon you need to stay 12 meters behind the one in front of you. And I really felt during races that at 12 meters you still feel quite a difference. So you still have a big benefit of the guy riding in front of you. So in the last experiment we actually investigated until what distance we could go with the second cyclist until he stopped having an advantage. Mm-hmm. And we saw that at 12 meter you still have about 20% reduction in drag. So they actually should change the rules there and make it up to 18 meters, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something that I noticed in a race that I was riding behind the guy, and then I tried to pass him, and then suddenly I felt a lot of wind, and I was like, oh no, I should not do that. I should stay here.
So what you're saying is that it's better to be second all the way until the end, and then just overtake them at the person who's leading at the end.
After the cycling, still the running comes.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, that's true, of course, yeah.
So and save energy for the run.
So you say save energy for the run,
yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay. Very, very interesting. It's kind of cool to see you combine it with your own hobbies as well. Yeah. Monique and Venda, so before you got involved in iGEM, did you know anything about gene doping?
No.
You're like, gene doping, what? Is that just two words put together and made up? So, because your team is, so I'm not a biologist, I'm a physicist, but your team is predominantly made up of biologists. And when we were meeting to organize and get you involved in Bingewatch Academy, you told me some really cool things about the team, like that you had people in the team with no experience in programming and suddenly had to learn programming. What other multidisciplinary components were brought into the team? Because when people look at this, they look at it as just, may say, it's just DNA, and you're just looking for things in DNA. What else is there that you actually did?
Yeah, but the thing about iGEM is that we do the whole thing. So it involves, of course, in the lab, in the wet lab, where we do our scientist stuff, but it also involves the dry lab, which some of us do some modeling that we mentioned a bit, but it also involves human practice, which means how we need to see how our project actually affects the world and how the world can help us kind of develop our projects. But also, if you think a lot of this lab stuff are not cheap, and we actually do have to get our own money. And so we do have our own sponsoring team, which consists also of one of us. So it's really an interdisciplinary thing.
Yeah, I think you summed it up well. Yeah.
So, Monique, how hard was it to get funding?
I think I'm not the right person to ask. Maybe Susan will tell you. I think our sponsor manager worked really, really hard to get us where we were.
It's a very politically correct answer.
Yeah. But our team also did something different. We went to China. So that's also another big financial burden. I think the TU Delft also really helped a lot, paid for flights and those kind of things. But like I said, the project would not have been possible without that money.
Of course. But the other thing about it is that not only were you also working together and you got a chance to go to China and present, but you also were successful, right? You won some awards.
Yeah.
We were lucky enough to win 2 awards.
And what awards were those?
We won our track project. So iGEM is divided into different tracks, like pharmaceutical, applied design, manufacturing, and we were lucky to be the best in our track, at least chosen to be the best for our track, and we also won the best applied design, I think. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So are the both of you now finished with iGEM, or are you still in the background helping the 2019 team in any way that you can?
Yeah, we are really happy about iGEM, and we would like it to grow more and more. So we're always happy to help.
So you're very approachable. It's not like the day you finished, you went, "That's it, I'm done."
No,
don't come near me. Don't mention the word iGEM to me ever again.
We're still wearing this, aren't we?
So the whole team gets their own. I'm going to call them superhero costumes. So do you wear them when you're socializing, when you're all together?
Maybe not. No. To the bar.
No, I mean, it's a great conversation starter. And then you also could promote iGEM to a whole bunch of people who never thought about gene doping. I, for one, when I sat down and we had a meeting the first time to talk about your project, I had a totally different impression of what you were actually working on. But when I came out of the first meeting, it was like, it's even better than what I was expecting it to be. And then just very, very quickly, do you think that the Flash and those at Star Labs could actually use your technology for their own work?
I mean, because all meta-humans are genetically modified?
Yeah.
So then, yes. That's why I looked to Venda. Venda's watched everything. So she's an incredible source.
Let's look to our CW Flash Series 1 to 5 expert, Venda, for that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. But looking at the series, it looks like they have really amazing scientists that have much more better equipment than we are. So actually, I don't know if that will help that much. But theoretically, yeah.
They have a cool looking set. Most of that's just cardboard painted. Okay, that's what it is. It doesn't even work. But it was really interesting and really great to have you come and speak as well. So last of all, Maya. So Maya, you're a bachelor student in physics, which I never said. And what year are you in?
Second year.
Second year.
Yeah.
And where are you originally from as well? That's something I think you should point out.
From Curaçao.
You're from Curaçao?
Yes, my third year in the Netherlands at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm a physicist, so we're kindred spirits in the physics world. Why did you decide to pursue physics?
Because I was a dreamer, I suppose, on Curaçao, because on Curaçao you don't have a lot of influences at all in any scientific fields, really. But my mom would always catch me staring outside at stars, and I would always wonder what's happening, why are there so many stars, how does that work? And my dad would introduce me to some books, and I would read up by myself. So my original interest was astronomy, and I was planning on studying astronomy before I moved to the Netherlands. But only later did I realize that astronomy is only one part of the greater that is physics. And so I decided that physics is just much broader. I might as well go and do that. And so I did. Okay,
and so here you are, and you're a physics student. So you presented 2 different ideas today. You looked at the whole shock waves and dealing with people flying through cities and all the carnage and damage they could have. And then you looked at the time travel aspect of it. So you've looked at the physics behind both. So which one do you think is more realistic in terms of what the characters would actually do, and which one would you like to have?
Are you asking me if
Would
I
you
want
like to
to
be
destroy
able,
a city?
Yes, no, not destroy cities. I would say encourage structural redesign at specific moments when they are urgently needed.
Maybe if we put Barry on the moon and let him cycle the moon for 6 months, he could try and travel a little bit through time. But again, we don't know if you can travel back in time, so he can do that once and go forward in time and just stay there for the rest of his life. But I think maybe for the superheroes, just like we don't have commercial jets, and we have jet no-go zones because of the destruction that they cause and all the sound and everything. So maybe we have areas where either the Flash or Supergirl aren't allowed to go through, like New York City and wherever they are.
So basically what you're suggesting is, let me get this right, is a kind of free-range area, kind of like you have for chickens, you know, a free-range chicken area. We'll call it a free-range, huge field. You just let all the speedsters go into the field and run around to their heart's content.
Definitely, and have fun by themselves over there at a normal speed.
at a given distance away from destroying any buildings.
Yeah, exactly.
That's your suggestion.
Exactly.
Good luck getting that true.
Yeah.
It'll
be a little bit hard fighting superheroes if they can't even reach them.
Yeah, exactly. I must ask you, because you mentioned that just in the first thing you said, that when you were in Curacao growing up, that you may be short of people that could inspire you, or looking for people who could act as inspiring you to pursue physics. So for you, who was the person who kind of inspired you? And then now when you look at, let's say, popular culture, who do you look at in popular culture and go, wow, I wish they were around when I was, 10, 11, 12?
You're talking about Black Panther, definitely. I think if I forgot her name.
Shuri.
I think if Shuri was around when I was much younger, that would have been amazing. Of course, I have Neil deGrasse Tyson to look up to. He's an amazing black figure that is extremely well known in the scientific field. And seeing him be up there was very inspiring. But I think if pop culture, me being young and only looking at superheroes and anime and everything like that, I would see someone like Shuri. And there was another girl that was being introduced in the Marvel world as well. This little black girl that was also...
So there's a comic book
from comic.
2016, Riri Williams.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, Riri Williams. I think if that was part of my youth, I would have been... I was way off there, but
yeah.
I would have been quite inspired, probably.
So for those who don't know who Riri Williams is, she's a 15-year-old African-American student who reverse engineers the Iron Man suit in her MIT dorm, and then she starts flying around in it and doing missions, and then she gets the attention of a certain Mr. Anthony Stark, who flies in and ends up recruiting her, and she ends up fighting alongside Iron Man and War Machine. So if you want to get a really cool comic, you should definitely read it. It's really awesome.
Influences like that are extremely important for minorities, definitely. I think on Curacao especially.
And I'm going to ask one last question. Do you think that the superhero films are addressing that? Do you think that, because most of the characters, like The Flash was 1940, Supergirl was 1959, and then all the major Marvel characters that came out, except Black Panther, who was in the 60s, the rest of them were all written in the 60s, predominantly by white males in offices. Do you think, though, that the Marvel Cinematic Universe or the other superhero films are addressing this imbalance? Is it better than it was?
I think, especially with the introduction of Riri Williams, they're going in the right direction, that there's supposed to be more diversity in general. It can't help, of course, that most comics started in a period where minorities weren't important. But
I just wouldn't say minorities weren't important. Minorities, in many cases, weren't
recognized.
Weren't recognized, exactly. And that was the issue. And Stan Lee, who would have written many of the characters, I mean, that was the world he grew up in, and he was influenced by that world.
Yeah, and there's nothing I can do about that. But I'm happy that now that people are turning more towards a more diverse. They're realizing that their audience is more diverse, and so they have to try and compensate for that as well.
I agree.
Which is very good.
So I got one quick question for all four of you. Alexander, favorite superhero?
The Arrow.
Arrow.
If you count it as a superhero.
Oh, he's definitely super, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Venda?
I have no clue. Maybe I'm still waiting for Asian superhero. Then we're talking about that.
Yeah, and that's funny you say that. It's a great a great time to bring it up because there will be a Marvel film with a character called Shang-Chi, I think his name is. He's in the comic books. It'll be out in the next 2 or 3 years. He'll be the first lead Asian superhero.
Okay, then maybe he will be. I don't know. I don't know. You shoot me like that now, but I don't know.
Not even The Flash, even though you've watched all 127 episodes?
No, I don't know. It's too difficult to choose right now.
I'll put you on the spot. You can think about it for the podcast.
Okay,
for me, it's easy. Like, Venda got me hooked on The Flash, so I feel like you have to say The Flash. I don't think I was really into superheroes before I met you, Barry, and now I think I might start watching more superhero movies. So kudos to you.
That's positive for me, yeah. That's a win. I'm happy with that. Positive influence on getting everyone to superheroes. Yeah. Maya?
For me, it's difficult. I think if Zuri from the Black Panther had more screen time, I would be more into her. But I like Tony Stark because he's smart. And Vision because I'm oddly attracted to him. But
So you're partially attracted to a purple android humanoid with a cape with a mind stone in his forehead.
I wish I could explain it. But I can't.
You don't have to. It's okay.
Good.
It's okay. There have been your speakers. A round of applause once more for the speakers. Okay, I see we've ran a little bit over time, but to be honest, I was just having so much fun having the discussion with speakers. So, gentle reminder, Avengers Endgame. I'm going to see it third time tomorrow. But keep in mind, don't spoil the Endgame. Please don't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it. Let them go in and enjoy it for what it is, and let them come out then. And then, because I was actually, myself and Yannick here from Studium Generale and Maya were sitting down before we came in here today, and I said to both, have you seen Endgame yet? And they're like, no. I said, I need to talk to someone about Endgame. And it's like I have to pick people who have only seen it. But please, don't spoil it. You will be able to see another or hear another podcast from this series, Bingewatch Academy Superhero Science. It's going to be online late next week because we're doing the podcast interviews next Tuesday, and it'll be probably 3 different episodes. So please listen to all of them because you get to hear a little bit more from all the speakers, and we get to talk about different topics that, well, there's so much stuff I didn't get a chance to talk about that we're going to talk about in those particular podcasts. And the next episode, which is the last episode in Bingewatch Academy Superhero Science, it's episode number 4, and the focus is going to be on Daredevil and the idea of augmented senses and how does Daredevil see? Well, we're going to have a researcher telling us exactly how we can actually do that, and then we're going to have another researcher here from the university talk about, well, how can he predict and know that certain things are happening. And then finally, we're going to have a student who I was working with talk about drones and how drones can be used to do, well, quite astounding things and actually replicate some of the abilities of Daredevil, who is also known as Matt Murdock. So I suggest that before you come here for the next episode, which is on the 13th of May, that you have a go and a watch at some of the episodes of Daredevil, which is on Netflix, and there are 3 seasons. Have you seen Daredevil? You've seen it? Have you seen it all? Is there any superhero season you haven't seen?
I don't know.
Not sure. I mean, that's probably, yes, you've seen them all. So just to repeat, the next episode, episode 4, will be on the 13th of May, right here at the Owl Auditorium. Same time at 7:30. And that's a Monday, by the way, just in case you're wondering. And it will be great, fantastic to see you all here for that particular episode. I've been your host, Barry Fitzgerald. This has been Bingewatch Academy Superhero Science, episode number 3, The Flash and Supergirl. I hope you've enjoyed this evening's presentation. One last round of applause for all the speakers, please. And thank you very much for coming along. Good night.